All through her career, from a teacher to regional head of academics, she has had to be a teacher, a mentor, team builder, and a team player. All her colleagues have openly credited her for thinking out of the box and inspiring them to challenge the boundaries of their thinking skills. All the institutions she has been with have appreciated the timely creative solutions to nagging issues and the capability of conflict resolution and building team cohesion through patient listening. She loves to travel, is a foodie, appreciates theater, and constantly explores her limits of understanding the world. She is also a yoga practitioner and a connoisseur of Indian folk arts. She is currently dedicated to creating awareness and promoting the learning of the art forms in children and adults alike. She has also created a group to learn and appreciate the beauty, architecture, and history of ancient temples of India. She is based out of Bangalore and currently works as a teacher trainer for Academy for Creative Teaching. She has headed institutions like Vishwavidyapeeth School, International Center for Excellence, Vijay Kiran Group of Institutions, GCIS International School. She was the regional academic head for Pearson Schools. She has also worked as a coordinator at Vidyashilp Academy, Bangalore. Welcome to CC Friday, Kritika.
Thank you.
Kritika is going to conduct the session on two topics. The first one is establishing routines in classrooms. Not only will creating routines help teachers manage all there is to accomplish in the classroom every day, but it also provides the much needed structure for the students. Consistent routines are one of the best strategies for avoiding behavior management issues as well. And our expert today will let us know more. The second one is on giving feedback. As educators and facilitators, we are always giving feedback. In order to be effective, the feedback needs to be meaningful, for only then will it enhance their learning and achievement. Let us learn some strategies and become aware of some do's and don'ts so that we can give meaningful feedback not just to the students but also to our colleagues and the parents. So over to you, Kritika.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Anupama. It's always a pleasure to, to connect with you and your teachers. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. And hopefully we will have a fruitful 1 hour now.
We have teachers from DPS, Varanasi, Nasik, and Lava Nagpur, all the three.
Oh, great.
With
Great.
us
That is
today.
nice. That is very nice.
So just allow me to present the screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Not yet.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
All yours.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Let's begin our first topic for today, establishing classroom routines in middle school. One of the, what do you say, challenging problems that are there, not only for your school, but it's for all schools across the world, right? So let's look at a few things. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so what are the objectives of today's session? By the end of the session, you will be able to recognize why classroom routines are important for children. So first of all, to understand why routines are important. Then connect the role that psychology plays in the behavior of adolescent children. So we are going to see how psychologically the children are in their behavior and and that's the reason why they behave in a certain way in the classroom. Identify the need for a smooth transition from primary school to middle school. Plan and develop classroom strategies, procedures for an effective class, and share some of the best practices in establishing routines in middle school, because most of you would have, practiced something, right? So we'll also have an opportunity where we will learn from each other what we have practiced in our own classrooms. Next slide. So let's look at the ground rules for today. Since this is an online session, I request each and every one of you to be interactive when the questions are posed to you. And considering the number is 185 or 86 of us on this platform, it would be good if you answer your question, or you want to pose a question through the chat box, right? So I'll be able to see them, and maybe we'll take the questions at the end. Keep the cameras always switched off. So there are many people I can see right now. I think you can switch off your cameras unless you're requested to switch them on. Stay on mute through the session unless you're asked to speak. Then jot down your questions and ask them when you're requested by the speaker. Okay, so before we move on to the next slide, I request all of you to switch off your, because what happens when the bandwidth becomes heavy, and the presentation gets a little slow. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Okay, why is routine important for a child? That's the first question. When we talk about routines in school, we first need to know, why do we need routines at all? Is it important? And if it's important, why important? Routines help children feel safe, develop life skills, and build healthy habits. Routines help parents and teachers feel organized because it reduces the stress and finds the time for, and we can find time for some enjoyable activities at home or at school. Good routines are well planned and regular, and they're predictable. So when we are talking about routines being predictable, what we're trying to say is that if the child knows that a particular time it is required to do a particular thing, which is predictable, then the child learns to do it well. Therefore, the routine has to be predictable. A daily routine for kids helps in skill-based learning, cognitive, and social emotional development. Studies have shown that if you follow a specific timetable for kids, it increases their ability to learn and solve problems. A daily routine for kids helps them to feel accomplished. I think that's the more big thing about, why a routine is really important, is that they really feel very accomplished that they have done something. Yeah. Let's move to the next slide. Now, what is the psychology of middle school children? Right, so most of the age group that these children fall in are largely between 11 and 19 years, which is otherwise what you call as the adolescent period of a child. Now, what happens during the adolescent period of the child? The brain continues to change, every time, all of us, the brain keeps changing, right? But it changes in huge leaps and bounds during this period, that is the adolescent period. So, because the brain is changing so much, the amount of social and emotional and cognitive flux that the children are going through is huge, right? So obviously, even there are a lot of hormonal changes taking place in these children. And hence, you will see that this is the kind of behavior of the children simply because one is physically they're going through these hormonal changes, and psychologically, their brain is also undergoing huge leaps of development. Next slide. So then what happens? Now, because these adolescents are undergoing so much of change, right? So they're they're going bodily changes. So there's puberty that is attached to, children. Their body changes are happening. And because of the hormones, the focus is now more on making friends. They want to impress their friends. They all the time want to be with friends. They might sometimes sound very irrational to us. They might sound very stupid to us sometimes. But these are the changes that are happening in the adolescent child. So, not just about the changes that take place in the child physically or mentally, the changes are also taking place in subjects, right? So now till they are in grade 4, you will see that they are largely doing arithmetic. There is very little bit of geometry in math. But then once they come on to these adolescent years, math becomes arithmetic, geometry, and algebra. Environmental science becomes history, civics, geography. Science becomes physics, chemistry, biology. So you see, they are dealing with so many changes. Not only changes in their brain, changes in their physical self, but also changes in the subjects, right? Next slide. So what they need at this point of time is a very understanding teacher, or they need a very understanding parent, because they are trying to deal with so many changes, right? And you will also see when you interact with parents will tell us, oh, he sleeps very late, all the time sitting with the mobile and reading late. But if we were to understand the biological change that is taking place in the body, then we will be more sympathetic to our children. So there is this hormone which is called melatonin. Melatonin is the one, so this happens because a sleep hormone called melatonin is secreted at around 10 p.m. due to the biological clock of the children, and hence they do not get sleep very early. So we think that they are staying up very late. So again, it's blame it on hormones, yeah, not on the children directly. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah. So that, as much as we can see on one side certain negatives because of the hormonal changes that are taking place in the body, there are also certain positives. See, the adolescent brain is simply wired to seek reward. So if you want to praise an adolescent child or a middle school child, you will see the result is more positive. They are very receptive to it, right? And there was a test conducted when they saw that the ventral striatum, which is there in the brain, suddenly lit up very bright when these adolescent children were being praised, when as in compared to when adults were being praised, right? So, and we also know that at this particular age, if parents or teachers are the kind who keep nitpicking with them, we keep criticizing them, they will just switch off. They will not cooperate with us, right? So knowing these changes that are taking place in our children when they move from primary school to middle school, it will help us as teachers to know that we have to handle these adolescent children a little differently. Yeah. Next slide. So, so far, just to summarize what we did till now, we've looked at the changes that take place in the brain and the hormonal changes that take place in children, which affect their behavior in classroom or at home, right? And knowing that, it also gives us an opportunity to understand that we need to treat these middle school children a little differently compared to our primary school children. That's what we have learned till now. Now, when we're moving on to middle school, in terms of from classrooms, right? So how till today the child has been sitting in a 4th class or the 5th class, now the child is moving to middle school. I remember when I was in school as a tiny girl of primary school, when it was time for us to move to 5th grade, or even at a time when we have to move to 8th grade, which was called high school for us, just before our summer vacations, our teachers would take us to those classrooms, and they would get us to sit in those benches. So we were, sitting in those tiny benches, but suddenly, that, okay, from next year on, or another 2 years later, I will be going and sitting in a different classroom, bigger benches, huger benches, better, locker facilities which were not there for primary school, but now are being provided for the bigger classes, right? So that kind of a smooth transit. So what happens is the school is preparing the children to transition, right? To transition to a bigger class. So preparing them that way. So you take them and make them visit things which are meant for big children. So a classroom, make them sit in the classroom, and they feel so excited, and they're looking forward to come to the middle school. And also the primary school teachers, especially the class where the transition is going to take place, where they're going to move to middle school, the teachers should speak to these children and tell them what is the expected behavior. So they should be telling them, see, you were being taken care as a baby till now, right? We have two teachers, there's a mother teacher in the class, and the teachers are largely pampering the primary school children. But by the time they move to middle school, they're expected to be a little more independent, right? And that is what the teacher will have to explain to the children. So expected behavior should be explained to the children. Then also in many schools, there's a change in uniform, right? Some schools have shorts, and then from shorts, they move on to pants. Some schools have skirts, and from skirts, they move on to salwars, or again to pants. So, but then you talk to them about, the change in uniform and why the change in uniform. All these help a child transition from primary school to middle school. Yeah. Next slide. Okay. So now we have looked at the psychological aspect, and we have also looked at the physical aspect. Now let's look at what are the things that we can do in class, right? What classroom management strategies I need to develop for an effective class in middle school, right? So again, the policies or the procedures in our classroom are now going to change a lot from the primary school to the middle school. So every teacher, irrespective of what subject she teaches, should have her set of ground rules. So I've just listed a few. We'll go through them one by one. Like, for example, let's say it's a language teacher. So the language teacher will not require all her books on the same day, like the textbooks, the grammar books, the literature book. So what she can do is she can assign dates to the children, and say, on Mondays, I want you to get your textbooks. On Wednesdays, I want you to get your grammar book, or whatever, those kind of a thing. That is a ground rule that she has for her subject. And she will have to share that with the children, with the children in the beginning of the year itself, right? And the science teacher might have a different set of, ground rules. She might say, I want you to carry color pencils, because when we are going to be drawing diagrams, I want you to color them. Then I want you to carry your scrapbook, because certain things we will do there, or the record book. Sometimes it can also be that certain science teachers will say, as I keep explaining, I want you to take down running notes. Certain other teachers will say, when I explain, I want you to listen. I will dictate notes to you later, right? But whatever it may be, those ground rules have to be specified, and it is specific to subjects. Similarly, the social studies teacher will sometimes, there are certain social studies teachers who want their textbooks to be open as soon as they enter the class. Certain other teachers want the textbook to be closed. They will say, once I finish my explanation, then I will tell you to open your textbook. Then to carry the map book, when to carry the map book, how to write down notes, all these instructions, again, the teacher will have to give the children. Same the maths teacher, she has to put her ground rules and say, I want you to carry in your instrument box every day. And in the instrument box, there has to be one sharp pencil and a sharpener. I want you to have 2 pens, then a centimeter scale, a compasses, whatever. All these rules have to be specified. Then also how to check homework, for example, because math is a subject where homework is given every single day. So maybe the teacher devises a plan. She'd say, every day 3 sums. So we will put the sum on the board, or one by one I will call children to put the sum on the board. You take a pencil and tick it. In case your sum is wrong, then you do the working of the sum again in pencil, whatever her ground rules are. These are the rules that have to be very specified to the child in the beginning of the year itself. Similarly, art or physical education, library rules, how many cards everyone will get, how many days the card can be kept with them, what are the rules that have to be followed when a child gets into the library, what is expected. All the ground rules have to be specified. Not the general ground rules of the classroom, but these are subject specific ground rules. Yeah. So if you have to put your class in order, and if you have to get your teenage children or adolescent children to listen to you, you will have to put these rules in place. Okay. Next point. Next slide. So it goes the same thing with all the other subjects. Sometimes you might have to kind of change the seating in your class, right? In order to have an effective classroom, you might have to change the kind of seating. You also will have to tell them rules about the restroom. How often can they go to the bathroom? And in your class, whether you're going to allow them to the bathroom or not. Everything. In certain schools, I've also seen that some teachers emphasize that there should be a bookmark for every notebook that they have and a textbook that they have. Certain schools have, in order to see there's some kind of orderliness in the class, have color coded their books. Okay, so the math will be orange in color. That is the external cover that I mean. English will be blue in color, different colors like that. These are all just strategies so that, that sometimes, children take out a wrong book and write down their notes, right? If they've not brought their book. So in a math class, if yours is a yellow color book, and if a child is removed a blue color book, for sure the child has not brought the correct notes to class, right? So these are some of the techniques that you could use to ensure that there is there's a kind of a set routine. These are all the routines that you need to establish in the beginning of the year itself with your children. Yeah. Next slide, please. Another thing I missed out there in the previous slide was about attendance. In big schools, in huge schools, sometimes the previous teacher would have, just 5 minutes before the bell has gone, the child would have asked to go to the toilet, and it may never come back in 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe going around the school, we do not know in which corner the child is, right? So it is important that from middle school, you start taking attendance in every period, because then you know whether the child has been present in your class or not, right? And when you're taking the attendance to one odd child in the class will say, ma'am, he's not absent, he has gone to the loo, right? So for you to get a hang, so these are small, they might look a little tedious, but nevertheless they help establishing routines in the class. And you also tell children what is their expected behavior, right? So you can say, for example, when I ask questions, I want you to raise your hand. I do not want you to give mass answers. When somebody is talking, I want you to listen. Yeah, and you will respect school's property. These are the rules, and these are the expected behavior that you want your children to have. Specify that very clearly to them, and tell them that if these are not followed, what consequences they could possibly have. Next slide. Procedures. Again, just like how we spoke about the ground rules, we need to specify the procedures with our children, because again, so many teachers will be walking into a middle school classroom, right? As opposed to a primary school. In primary school, the number of teachers who walk into a classroom are a lot less compared to in middle school, right? So the number of teachers come, each of them will have their procedure, right? In terms of either correcting books or taking homework, and whatever, each teacher will have her own procedure. So it's very important that these procedures are explained to children, and do give children responsibility. Assign tasks for children. Middle school children love to do work, and especially when they're doing good work and you compliment them, they would be very happy. So delegate tasks to children. These again, this also should become routine. Maybe you can change after a month, you can change the duty on to some other child, but set in this particular routine. Next slide. Yeah, so you will see in terms of dispersal, noise management, and how the children come into the class, when children fall sick or when they get hurt, what do they do? What is the procedure for exams? What's the procedure for tests? All these things have to be cleanly and very neatly laid down to children. And please walk the talk. Tell them what to do, and you also do the same, right? And here is one point of caution. What generally happens is many teachers, when they do not emphasize things properly with their teachers, and when children do not follow, they have a tendency to go straight to their coordinator and complain and say, this child is not doing. Some of them walk into the principal's office and complain to the principal. My suggestion to you is, kindly do not escalate all these problems. Everyone has their set of work to do. Your classroom is yours and you need to sort that out, right? Unless the problem becomes a very big problem and you have tried different strategies and they're not working, then you bring in your coordinator or your head of the department and try and discuss with them. But please don't go to your principal for everything. Yeah, she has her set of work to do. Similarly to the coordinators, right? So each of you consider yourself the boss of your own classroom and handle, of course, keep everyone in the loop, but don't take the problem for somebody else to sort. You will have to be able to sort the problems. Yeah. Next slide, please. So what is the key here? Consistency. So it's not that you're going to be strict in the first week of school and after that you will relax, or you will be strict in the first month of school and after that you will relax. Irrespective of which month, which week, you keep consistency, right? And that's when you will have an extremely beautiful class. And again, no empty threats. Stick to what you say. So if you're going to say, if you're not going to do the homework, I'm going to take away your PT period. Do it. If you say something, do it. Yeah. So, and only then will children understand and they'll say, okay, this teacher means business, and walk the talk. If you want your children to come to class on time, then you go to class on time. If you want the children to write neatly in their textbooks, then you write neatly on the board, right? And if you want them to keep their desks and chairs neat, then keep the teachers' desk chairs neat. So whatever you tell them, you do that. Walk the talk, right? And most important, apart from all the other suggestions that we're given here in order to have established routine in classroom, apart from all this, why is all this done? All this is done so that we engage our learners. So beyond all these strategies, what is important is what, as a teacher, what am I instructing in the classroom? What am I teaching in the classroom? That becomes the most important thing. So apart from engaging the learners with lovely activities and beautiful examples that you could bring on to the classroom, these are several other strategies that you could employ to establish routines in your middle school classroom. Next slide. Yeah, so we spoke about this. Okay, now is sharing time. Share one effective procedure or which you have tried. This is for all teachers. You can just type this in your, chat box. Or if you have this raise your hand option, you can raise your hand. And I would like at least 2 or 3 teachers to share some procedure that they have, which has been effective in their classroom. So we'll give 1 minute for this. Can any of you share, please? Maybe one teacher from each school, one from Nashik, one from Nagpur. Yes, Bharti, do you want to share?
Okay.
Yeah.
Jai Hind, everyone. And the one effective thing I think is paraverbal. Like we sometimes we try to discipline our children. So rather than just telling keep quiet, if we use some sign in the class, so there we are giving chance to our children to share their ways, and at the same time we can see the discipline. But let me say that it should go very well. Because if we just say keep quiet, the children will be completely what should I say, means वो दब जाएगा. He or
Absolutely.
she won't be able to express himself or herself. So this is very, very important procedure where you are encouraging your child to share and maintaining the discipline, like yes, doubt, done, like
Yeah.
that many things. So I really
Absolutely.
found it very, very effective in my.
Great, fantastic. This is a beautiful procedure, and I think all teachers should adopt it because, as you're saying, imagine one teacher's voice versus 33 children's voice, right? And if you keep saying, keep quiet, and bang the table, not happening. A lot of non-verbal, signs should be read by students. Fantastic. Good one, Bharti. Okay, can I expect another teacher
Thank
to
you,
share?
ma'am.
Anybody else? One more teacher, then we'll move on. Yes, Manisha.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
One
Yeah.
thing that I try to do in my class when there is a, voice level up to 40 students against one teacher, then I reduce my volume and I say, now try to hear out what I'm trying to say.
Correct.
Automatically, they go quiet.
Yeah, exactly. Great. That's also a nice procedure. That reminds me of my physics professor when I was doing my 11th and 12th, He would do the same thing. We were around 70 children in a classroom. And when this sir would dictate the notes, he would be so soft. And for the first week, most of us were not able to jot down everything that he said. But over a period of time, we got so used to, he said, I am not going to scream. If I'm going to scream and shout, then by the time I'm 40, I will go deaf. Right? So, fantastic one, Manisha. Good one. Roshni. Okay, we'll take the last sharing from Roshni. Go ahead, Roshni.
Jai Hind, everyone. I think normally when we say keep quiet or don't talk or just listen to me, instead of that, if we just turn these sentences into affirmations that let us all lower down our voices, it makes a lot of change. Instead of you do this, let us all do that. It makes changes, and then children finally they just stop doing whatever they're doing, and then they listen to you. They get back to the normal thing. Ki, acha, teacher is saying something. We all
Yeah.
have to do this, because pointing out then it's not correct. What I feel
Correct.
is that, because normally
Yeah.
sometimes even we raise our voices.
True. That's a good one, Roshni. It's about how you, instead of over a period of time, these negative ones start, not having any effect on children, right? So, yeah, we can do. So there's somebody who's also said about clapping hands. Yeah, these are all very good strategies that you can use to. Great. Thank you for being an interactive one. Yes, Vibhuti, that's a good one too. That's a very nice one. Yeah, nice suggestion. Yeah. Can we move on to the next slide? So then what is the ultimate goal? What is our ultimate goal? The ultimate goal of teaching is not to enforce rules and routines, but it is to teach effectively, right? And when teachers are together, we should spend most of our time talking not only about classroom management, but also about effective teaching. So that is the focus. But what happens in middle school is it takes a reverse, right? We start talking more about classroom management and we talk less about teaching because of the kind of changes that we see from primary to middle school level. When we are effective, majority of the kids are learning and getting what they need. Goals and objectives are achieved, and we teachers feel an incredible sense of accomplishment, right? So when we have a well managed class, what becomes even more easier is that we are able to teach well. Yeah. And that should be our goal. Next slide. Well, so that comes to the end of our first presentation. I'm sure most of you've kind of, yeah. So just to summarize the whole thing, we have to set in routines in middle school. First, by seeing or allowing the transition to take place from primary school to middle school. And for the teachers to be aware that there are hormonal changes that are taking place in our children. There's a lot of change that's taking place in their brains. They are not going to be taking instructions like how they did take instructions when they were primary school children. They are more questioning, and they obviously will not respond to any kind of bickering and cribbing, this kind of an attitude of finding fault with children. If that is the attitude of the teacher, then definitely for us to establish routines in these middle school children is going to get very tough. Walk the talk, all of you. Yeah, and consistency is the key. So we come to the end of the first presentation. We have already taken 7 minutes extra for the second one. So how do we go about, Anupama ma'am? Do I open it for questioning?
Yeah, I suppose we can use 5 minutes in case teachers
Yeah.
have any questions, or they would like
Sure.
to share what takeaways they have.
Please do. Let's keep 5 minutes for a question answer session. In case you have, please type the questions in your chat box so that I can, look at it.
Teachers, please go ahead and put in your questions, any queries or anything that you would want to share in the chat box so that ma'am can answer those questions.
So let me just read out what has come so far, because they're nice ones. There's one strategy where I say, I do not allow children to sit and answer. Good one. I ask them to get up and answer. Well, that's a great strategy that Sarang has employed in his classroom, and I'm sure it worked for him. Ritu says that we have only 2 out passes for students to leave classroom for any purpose. We can keep a control on the students who need to leave the class. Great. Vibhuti says, I often tell my class their noise level 1 to 5 or more and remind them of going down. That is 1, it is effective. That's a great strategy, very nice one. And you can show these 1, 2, 3 in your fingers itself. You don't even need to raise your voice. Great one, Vibhuti, very nice one. Then Siddharth says that which are the 3 must-have routines for any middle school classroom? Yeah, I think we've discussed that, right? Then where is it? Sorry. How about giving them time to read silently while we settle down? That's also a great one, Shanaz. You can do that. If it's worked for you, then it means it's working, right? Yes, Bharti, please type your question. It would be easier. Or you want to speak it out?
Yeah, I just want to ask you, ma'am, regarding
Yes.
the fast writers and slow writers in the class. Even though we do many strategies, like when we give some work, so we know few children, they complete the work very fast. Wherein other children, few children are. So we try many strategies, like we give them to assess other children, or we give them. But I want to ask you, do you have more? Because sometimes I feel that the children who are doing their work, they might sit for a longer time. Then they get bored. So I just want 1 or 2 more creative strategies. The children who finish the work, how should we? What extra thing like?
So I'll give you something that I tried as a teacher. I taught math. And I taught the high school children. So what I would do is sometimes I would go for substitution even to a primary class or even to a middle school class, but I always would take extra puzzles with me. Right? So I would go to the library and, note down the puzzles. Sometimes when I didn't have the time to note down, I would get the book, right? So, and would give it to children who finish their work fast. And I would choose a puzzle that's quite tough. So, the child may not be able to crack it immediately, but will take some time. Sometimes I have been surprised, where I have thought that the child will not crack the question, has cracked it in just 1 minute. And then you feel that sense of awe that your students have been able to crack it when you have not been able to crack. So I think you take higher order thinking skills, any of those questions which are related to a little bit of a higher order, take them to class and keep the children. Because most often our heart goes out to those children who do not meet grade level expectations. We don't much think for the super achievers, right? So we can take a little bit of the higher order thinking questions to them, and you can keep them engaged like that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Roshni, I liked your suggestion. When I feel the class is out of control, I myself start reciting tables. And when the children notice this, they stop and join me. That's a hilarious
Thank you,
one,
ma'am.
but it's a nice one.
I do that, ma'am. Thank you.
Very innovative, very innovative. I haven't heard this strategy before. So now I'm going to be using this as one of the, suggested ones
Sure,
for
ma'am.
teachers. It's a real nice one. Yeah. Let me just take up, yeah. How we consist the rule of our class from one teacher to another. I didn't understand this, Priya.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't understand your question.
Ma'am, sometimes it happen like in my class, the students used to shout a lot. In some class, teacher it say in my class they are very quiet. So I'm not getting
Hmm.
that how to make a consistency. Like in my class, they should follow the rules. Other teachers also, so they should follow the same rule.
Hmm.
So how it can be possible?
See, that's why I said consistency is the key. You
Yes,
should
ma'am.
lay down in the very first week itself, you should lay down your rules to children. And you
Okay,
should be
okay,
really very strict with them in that first week. If they don't
okay,
do what you have told them to do, you have to have consequences for them, right?
okay,
So
ma'am.
when you become and you be consistent with it for some time, right? Then children will start following your rules.
Actually, in the
Yeah.
beginning, they are very small, so I was very lenient with them. But
Ah,
later on, I have seen because they are very small, they are class 3. So later on, I have seen that means they are not following the classroom rules. Whatever I have did
yeah,
in the first, after the means I have seen few teachers classes they are listening, in few teachers they are not listening. So
yeah.
the point which I have noticed, and they are
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
extra
See,
notice.
let me tell you, children are very smart. They
Yes,
know,
ma'am.
see, even at your own home, you will see how the child behaves differently with the father and differently with the mother, differently with the aunt. And, they know how to manipulate, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So it is about how strict you are in getting. So you should be one of those teachers who sticks to your rules, but at the same time, the children can come to you for some kind of, they have doubts, they want to come and
Yeah,
speak to you.
yes, ma'am.
So you should be, what do I say, approachable, and at the same time, you should be strict. That's a balance that the teacher has to strike.
Okay, okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Can we move on to the next topic, Anupama? It's already 5:15.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
What if we don't finish by 5:30? Okay, this is another important topic about how you give feedback, right? So we'll move on to the next slide. Yeah. To identify the purpose of feedback is one of the objectives. To interpret the types of feedback, to articulate the characteristics of effective feedback, and to connect and appraise different ways to provide effective feedback. This would be the objectives for today's session. Next slide. Ground rules are the same, so we can move on to the next slide. Okay, now this is an activity for you, and I want responses just like how we had responses before for the question. We get different kinds of feedback in our day-to-day life. Example about the dishes we cook, right? So at home, when you're cooking, just as the first morsel of food goes into the mouth, different people will give you different feedback, right? And the kind of clothes that you wear, when you wear something nice or when you don't wear something nice and you come out, you get feedback from people. You also get some kind of feedbacks about the aesthetics of your own home, right? When somebody comes to your house, they give you feedback about the kind of furniture or art that you have. We like some of it, but sometimes we don't like some of the feedback that comes to us, right? Now, each and every one of you, just think about this and tell me what kind of feedback has left an impact in you. What kind of feedback has left an impact in you? Just type a few. I just want to see a few messages in the chat box. Appreciation motivates me. Great. Positive feedback. Oh, negative feedback too. Then positive and motivating. Can you be a little more specific? Because when you say positive, it's a big word. When you say negative, it's a big word. Like appreciation was more apt. Like that, is there anything else that you would like to share? What has left an impact on you? Okay. Appreciation works for me also. Feedback that boosts my confidence. Okay, Soma, got it. Another one or two. Can I have another one or two responses? Okay, feedback which clearly states my fault. Fantastic, Swati. I loved your comment, but also talks about what good I have done. So I think you can go today because you've understood it, Swati. Great, that she nailed it. Very good. The effort is acknowledged and the changes required are specified. Very good, Disha. From the ones who spoke less, okay, when feedback is given from the bottom of the heart, if the feedback is negative, it helps me to improve myself better. Details, okay, great, great. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, why do we need to give feedback? Now, what I'm considering right now is first to your students, okay, right? Why do we need to give feedback? Because we often misunderstand effective feedback for learning. That is one. And most of the times when we give feedback, we tend to be a little negative, right? But if we know that which are the kind of teachers that are remembered the most, the ones who give very effective feedback, because it's a distinct responsibility of every teacher to nurture a child's learning. Therefore, whatever feedback we give the child, it should be so constructive that he should not feel like leaving the classroom. Okay, next slide. So what is the purpose of feedback then? So feedback is given so that all of us, we know what we're doing. We know whether we're doing right or we're doing wrong. And the next part is, how do I plan to go ahead? That is the reason why feedback has to be given. That's the purpose of feedback. Okay, next slide.
Arey, Vikas.
Okay, so now here you might have heard of so many
Laptop.
educationists, right? I'm introducing you to one more educationist over here. His name is John Allen Clinton Hattie, shortly known as Hattie. He's an educationist, and he, along with two more of his colleagues, have come up with a way in which effective feedback can be given. Next slide. And for once, this educator is from Australia. Otherwise, we're always learning about American educationists, right? This is an educationist
टेबल है
from
ना, वो वाला नहीं है, छोटा वाला टेबल. उसके ऊपर एक मोटा
Siddharth,
सा-
I think you should switch off your mobile. You should mute your mobile. Yeah, thank you. Okay, then, so what is Hattie's model? Hattie's model says, feed up, feedback, and feed forward. That's all. So first you receive feedback, then you think about how, you feed up and then go ahead. So the questions that you need to ask are just three. Where am I going? Where am I going? That is feed up. Or in other words, what are my learning intentions? That is feed up. Feedback is how am I going? Right? And feed forward is where to next? Right? So the three questions that you have to ask when you're giving feedback is, where am I going? How am I going? And where do I go next? Right? So when you as a teacher are giving feedback to anybody, you should be able to tell where the child is going, how is the child doing or going, and what should the next step be, right? So these are the three questions that you should have answers to when you're giving feedback to people. This feedback could be a self-feedback. It could also be a feedback to anybody. Next question. Next slide. Yeah. So now we're looking at the types of feedbacks. In the types of feedbacks, we have 4 types of feedbacks. So they are corrective feedback, timely feedback, criteria-based feedback, and student-facilitated feedback. Okay, these are the 4 types of feedback. We go to the next slide. Okay, corrective feedback. Now, what is corrective feedback? Corrective feedback informs a student about what they did correctly and what they did not do correctly, right? And then you provide it with an explanation. You don't tell them you didn't do this correct, you didn't do that. That's not the way you say. You give them an explanation in such a way that they will not repeat it, right? And in addition, corrective feedback should encourage a child to put up that effort to correct himself. So that is corrective feedback. The second feedback is timely feedback. See, whatever feedback we give anyone is, it should be a timely feedback. Now, for example, a child has done his homework and that has come to you for correction. Now, if that has come to you for correction today is the day when you need to give feedback. If not today, at least tomorrow, right? But if you're going to give this feedback a month later when things are not going to be fresh in the child's head, then the child is not going to be able to correct his mistakes. Yeah. So this is timely feedback is for everyone. When the mistake happens, you do it then, when it is recent in the memory of that person. So it can be a mistake of your colleague, it can be your student, it can be also your parent, right? Anybody. Timely feedback. Next one. Criterion-based feedback, right? So you have a particular criteria, and based on that criteria is what the feedback is supposed to be. Now, let's say, for example, you have rubrics. Most of you know what a rubric is, right? So if you're giving, let us say, an essay to a child to write, then you have the rubrics in terms of, okay, the introduction has to be given. You list down the points on what basis you're going to evaluate that essay, right? And then once that criterion is ready for you, based on that criterion, you will give the feedback. So if the child has not given a good introduction, then you will mention the feedback that you will tell the child is, I think you should give a nice introduction before you start your before you start discussing the points, I think you should give a nice introduction. Sometimes you might say it is good for you to share an example of whatever you're saying. Very specific, right? Criterion based. So based on the criteria, you must be able to give feedback to the child, right? Then student facilitated feedback. Is this feedback that is generated by a student in regard to their own work. So apart from the kind of feedback that you would give the child, right? The feedback that they have based on their own work is also another kind of feedback. So there are 4 kinds of feedback that was proposed, and these are the 4 ones. Yeah. Now, types of feedback. Under the types of feedback, what are some of the positive examples that you can give? See, I've seen many teachers, and I think most teachers do that. When they read up a particular homework, they will just put a tick and they say very good, or they will say excellent, or they will put a smiley, right? Or they will say, if it is not very good, they will say, you can show improvement. You can do better. These are such feedback which have no meaning to the child at all. If you're telling me good, what is it that is good in the work? I want you to tell me that. If there is something that I have to improve, then tell me what exactly I should improve, instead of just saying you can do better next time. So the child doesn't know in what context should I do better next time, right? So now let's look at 1 or 2 examples of that, right? Here it is. Look at the feedback the child or a teacher has given there. I appreciate the hard work you have put in this paper. However, I was hoping you would include information on the benefits of physical activity. You're almost there. Keep up the hard work. So you see how beautifully this teacher has complimented the student. has found the place where the child has to improve. That is, where in this case, I was hoping you would include information on the benefits of physical activity. So that's the area that the child has to improve or add on to that written work, right? And also, after saying that, you're almost there, keep up the hard work. Such an encouraging statement, right? Then the other one, you're headed in the right direction. You just forgot to add both the numbers before dividing. You've almost got it. Okay. So again, see how positive, and pointing out specifically where the child had to work, right? So these are the kind of encouraging statements that will make the feedback very effective. Next slide. What are the characteristics of effective feedback? So one is, feedback should be educative in nature. Like how I said in the first case, it's good, excellent, very poor. Those are not going to be educative, right? Where exactly has what is good or what needs to be worked? If I get educated by that comment, then that feedback is a good feedback to me, right? Now, beautiful, there is something called the feedback sandwich, right? You begin with a compliment, you correct it, and then you begin with and you end with a compliment. So let's say, for example, there is a parent who comes to, you want to actually discuss a problem with the parent, right? So when the parent comes, you first, as a teacher, have something nice to talk about the child. Okay. However, sometimes you might find it really difficult, but nevertheless, begin with a compliment about the child, right? When you're talking something positive about the child, the parents' BP automatically comes down, right? And they become more receptive to listen to you now, right? Now you put in slowly and say, see, this is the issue with the child. You know what? He generally beats his peers. And then immediately what you should also say, do not take it as a complaint. You and I, that is I as a teacher and you as a parent, together will counsel the child and we shall fix the problem. But I'm just talking to you because I want you to be participative in it. I am not complaining. Yeah. And then later again, wind up with a compliment, right? This feedback sandwich works wonders. It works wonders. Not only with children, it works with parents, it works with each and every one of us, right? So, yeah. Next one, be sensitive to the individual needs of a child. You know that in the class you have different kinds of learners, right? And we also know that the mindset of children are different on different days. We do not know what has happened in their homes and in what kind of a mindset they have walked into school, right? So when we give a feedback to the child, let's not snap at the child, right? Let's consider and let us be sensitive. Let us behave in a way that we would like others to behave with us. Yeah. Next. So the feelings, keep the feelings component very active in you. Next is ask 4 questions. This is another technique to ask 4 questions. What can the student do? That is in terms of feedback. Any work, like it can be learning a subject or learning tough questions, solving complex problems, art activity, physical activity, whatever. What can the student do? This is something that you should ask. What can't the student do? Right? So there are children who can do certain things and who can't do certain things. How does the student work compared with that of others? How can the student do better? If you answer these 4 questions, you can give an effective feedback to anyone. Next slide. Yeah. Feedback should reference a skill or specific knowledge. Sarika, just type your question, dear. I won't take questions in the middle of the session. Huh? Type your question, then I'll answer it at the end of the... Yeah. Okay, so then feedback should reference a skill or a specific knowledge. That is important, right? So you highlight the points that need... let's say, for example, there's a child who does not write very good sentences, maybe grammatically wrong sentence, right? So that is to do with a specific knowledge. So you give feedback specifically on that. Sometimes there are children who do not write correct spellings. So your feedback should be based on spellings, right? So be very specific, reference to a skill or to a specific knowledge. Sometimes the children have not understood a particular concept, right? So you highlight on that. Give feedback to keep students on target for achievement. So when those four questions that we just answered, the four questions that were shown in the previous slide, if you answer those four questions, what you will be giving is a beautiful feedback to keep the students on target for their achievement. Okay, so that would also be these are specific ways to give feedback. Yeah, next slide. One-on-one meeting, I think this works wonders. But then sometimes you might wonder, oh my god, there are so many children in my class, how can I give one-on-one? But these one-on-ones can really work wonders in a class, because the child here knows that the teacher's focus is completely on me, right? The teacher is considering me so important that she has given me a separate time, right? So, and then you can give feedback to the person specifically, instead of speaking in front of the whole class and giving a feedback in front of the whole class and the child not feeling very comfortable to listen then, right? Then feedback can be given verbally, non-verbally, or also in the written form, that all of us know, right? So non-verbal cues, there are so many times, like how in the previous session we spoke about noise management, and how some teachers, there was a teacher who mentioned saying that we don't need to shout or talk, we can just we can signal with the hand or do any of those things which are non-verbal cues, which help giving feedback. So sometimes, when a child is doing something wrong, we shake our head, like this. So what is the feedback you're giving the child? No, this is not the right thing to do. Sometimes we do this, right? Or we do zip and throw the key. These are all, when there's too much of noise, that's a feedback we give them immediately, right? Yeah. Next slide, please. Concentrate on one ability or skill. So when we are trying to give feedback, let us not give too many things. Then it would confuse the child, or it will confuse even the parent. It will also confuse your colleague. Let us look at one, just any one, because then the person will focus on that one thing, right? And they will try to change that. They will try to better that, right? And when that happens, then you can move on to the next. You can continuously keep giving feedback, but just focus on one, so that there is a change that you will see, and then we can move on to the next, because everything can't be wrong, no? Yeah. Then there is this system. This is a very nice technique. This is called peer conferencing. Peer conferencing is where one child is giving a feedback to another child. So you as a teacher should educate your children. See, sometimes, all the time, the teachers cannot be giving the feedback, right, to children. So you should sometimes have children give feedback to each other, right? And and this is called peer conferencing. And when they're sitting in a peer conference, they have to take down notes and say what the other. So you as a teacher model that behavior, right? You model how you're giving the feedback to children. And tomorrow you can ask one child to critique another child's work and give feedback. Yeah. Next slide. Use a notebook to keep track of student progress. That's very important for all of us, and over a period of time, you will also be able to tell the parent or your coordinator or your peers or the principal of the different strategies that you have used with the child, right? When you're giving feedback and say, okay, I gave this feedback, I gave that feedback on that situation. It's always good to document it and note those things down. Yeah. Then there's another, this I just thought of this being a very important point, is return tests, papers, or comment cards at the beginning of the class, right? most of them will say, okay, I remember I have done that as a teacher myself, that I say, okay, today I've corrected your question papers, I've corrected your answer sheets, but I'm going to be giving your answer sheets at the end of the period, because I want to teach now. I want to teach for 10-15 minutes, and then I want to give in your papers. Yeah, you can do it if you're smart enough to be able to manage the questions that come your way from students. But otherwise, it is better to give it in the beginning of the class itself, so that you have enough time to give them the feedback, right? Feedback on their questions, the way they have answered. And you can also give that personal space to every child for them to be able to ask you relevant questions, and your discussion can be a very fruitful one. Yeah. Another one is, I remember this as a teacher in one of the schools. The chairperson of the school would make it a point, to write beautiful notes on feedback and give it to teachers. He made it very rare. He never gave it to many teachers. But when he did give it to teachers, it meant so much for us. You won't believe, in one of the schools where I worked, that the chairman of the school today is 80 years old. But I have the yellow post-it that he had given to me once, There was something that he had asked, and I had put it in a very beautiful format and very systematically. So he had written, "Dear Kritika, thank you for giving me this presentation. I've never seen a teacher so organized like you, So, and I've so imagine as an adult, if I can preserve it, how important and how nice a student will keep that feedback, right? Yeah, so that's a nice thing. You can write some small notes and put it on their book or on their table, wherever. Yeah. Next point. Give genuine praise. I think this is something, sometimes, we say all the time, very good, very nice. We so, make it a part of our vocabulary that we're constantly complimenting children. But I think when they really genuinely deserve praise, you should go beyond this nice work, or go beyond this good job or excellent, and really talk about the task or talk about the work that they've done, and give them a genuine praise, right? You can also write a note to the parent, in a diary, or give a phone call and mention it. It makes a lot. I remember, when I used to be a principal, I would do this very often. When I would walk into the staff room, I would give genuine praise and put it on the staff room notice board. So it became such a wonderful thing that when I would enter the staff room, everyone would automatically look towards the soft board to see what is ma'am going to put up there, right? Because it makes everyone feel so thrilled when you're praising them in public, right? So, and especially when you give them very good feedback for the kind of work that they have done, right? Then this other thing is also by saying, like, I noticed when you regrouped correctly in the hundreds column, you got the problem correct. All right. I noticed you arrived on time to class. When you mentioned this, I noticed this, I saw that. That's another beautiful way to give feedback, which shows that you as a teacher is actually being very observant. Yeah. Next point. Invite students to give you feedback. I think this is the most challenging thing that can ever happen for a teacher. As much as we give feedback to the students, we should encourage the students to give us also feedbacks. But if we are not very comfortable to listen to this feedback in an open classroom, you can always tell them to come to you and meet you personally. You can also ask them to write on a note of paper and leave that note of paper with you. Yeah, but it is important. And many schools towards the end of the year, or, at the end of a term, expect feedback from parents and expect feedback from students on their teachers. Yeah, it's good. Just like how, and see, if you are giving a very positive feedback, not only a positive, but an effective feedback, then students also will give you a very effective feedback. Yeah. Next slide. So what is the key trick? The key trick when you're giving feedback to anyone, let it be parents, let it be students, let it be your peers, let it be anybody, a friend or whoever, first begin with a compliment then give the correction that you want to, and wind it up again with a compliment. It will be taken in a very nice sense, and they will, you know, what do I say? They will value your feedback. Yeah. So I think we've come to the end of the second presentation too. And if there is any question, we shall give another 5 minutes. There were 2 teachers who raised their hands, so maybe those can take an opportunity to speak now. Yes, teachers, I don't remember the name, but there were 2 teachers who had raised their hand.
One was Damayanti, who raised her hand just now.
Yeah, Damayanti, why don't you say what you want to say?
I guess she's not there.
Yeah, anybody else? Or any question that you would like to raise? Looks like that there are no questions. So either they have understood everything that I've said or not understood anything at all. Anyway, it was a wonderful session. Thank you for this opportunity, Anupama. Yes, Councillor DPS, you have raised your hand. What do you want to say?
Rajeshri ma'am, please go ahead. Rajeshri ma'am, are you there?
Okay, Shanaz, do you want to ask something? Or you want to say something?
No, I was not asking you something. I just opened my video on my video. But yes, lovely session. And sometimes what we feel is in the first session was very.
You have to be a little loud, Shanaz. I'm not able to hear you.
Okay, fine. What I was saying that when we give feedback to the children on and as the occasion demands, we say that immediately. Sometimes the children feel sad.
Yeah.
And we know that, and so we keep quiet most of the time. And that is what goes wrong with us.
Yeah.
We are being emotional, not practical. But sometimes now at this age, I have learnt that we have to give the feedback at that particular time and instance.
Absolutely.
Because however bad the person may feel, it makes you a better person. And we as teachers, we are not working for that particular moment or time of their life. We are going to influence them or inspire them for becoming good people in their future. So being a bit strict, being a bit, instilling discipline with a strict hand as well as being gentle is important.
Yeah. Actually, maybe during the school time, the children may not like a very strict teacher, but once they move out of school, they always respect teachers who've been strict with them because they have learned from such teachers. Yeah. So good to be strict. Yeah. Counselor, you said that your mic is not working, but you can just type your question in case your mic.
She's written here, you spoke about giving feedback. What should we keep in mind while we receive feedback? There's another question which says, why do people take feedback negatively?
Okay, let me answer this question which says, what should we keep in mind while we receive feedback? I think we just need to keep our mind open. That's about it. Because there are so many such, there is something called the Johari window, if you've heard of it. The Johari window divides us into 4 parts. So there are certain things that we don't know about ourselves which somebody else will know, right? So we have to keep ourselves open to be able to listen to that. Yeah. So that's what I think you should keep in mind when you receive feedback. Damayanti says feedback can be in the form of smiley or given a star. You can give a star, you can give a smiley, but it does not convey anything, right? So along with it, you add a comment is what I'm trying to say, which is going to be beneficial. Okay, Prajakta says sometimes it happens that even if we give feedback positively, students feel down. How do we handle it? Yeah, see, this is something that you will develop over a period of time, Prajakta, because initially, till the student knows you, maybe they will feel a little bad. But once they understand that you actually don't, your intention is not to put them down, that you're doing it with a lot of respect, they will understand you, right? So it's just a matter of time, not to worry. Okay. Then giving feedback can change perspective about themselves and toughen them up. Absolutely, Meenakshi. Very true. Then Prajakta says, okay, fine. Yeah, I think we have answered all the questions.
Right. Thank you so much, Kritika. Siddharth sir, if you are here, would you like to say something? Siddharth sir, are you there?
Yeah, yeah. Thank
Can
you.
you
Thank
give
you
me a
so much.
minute? Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute. Hello. ಇಲ್ಲ ನನಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸೆಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ನಾನು. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, tell me.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
Siddharth, go ahead.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think it was a great learning for everybody. I
Thank
think
you.
the feedback session was really, really important for me because it was very particular on how you should be looking at giving feedback. I really loved the the feed forward, the feed up, and the feedback. I think that was a big takeaway for me. Thank you so much for sparing your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Siddharth. Feedbacks are most importantly, especially students who need hand holding. So as a teacher and parents together, if we work on it, it's quite smooth journey for all. But there are some parents who do not accept the flaws of their kids, though told positively and constructively. Please guide on it. Yeah, see, every rule will have an exception, isn't it, Roshni? So we are not going to find everyone who will understand us or accept everything that we say. It's just, again, consistency is key for everything. Consistency is key. Once, and then other thing is also, when I told you about the point where you jot down the points about a student, right? So when you keep jotting them down, then you have a cumulative resource with you. So when you then tell the parent, see, this step I have taken, this is done, this strategy is worked out, that strategy is worked, it is not working. When you have a cumulative response for you to tell the parent, initially they may not agree, but over a period of time, they will understand. And they will also understand how you care for their child. And that's the reason why you have documented it also, right? So over a period of time, they will accept it. Yeah. But it's just a matter of time. That's about it. Teacher-parent relationship is really important here. Absolutely. Relationships are the ones that can work wonders. You share a great relationship, your problem is 3/4 solved, right? Priya Singh says, very informative session, ma'am. Thank you so much. I will definitely implement this. Great. Yeah. We are done, I think.
Yeah, that brings to the end of a very, very informative, I think, a lot of learnings and takeaways for all of us from these two sessions that you've taken, Kritika.
Thank you. And I really enjoy when your teachers, when the DPS teachers actually participate and they put across their views. And that's what makes a session good, when you have informative, interactive.
Yeah. So some takeaways like ground rules when we were talking about establishing routines in the classroom, procedures and consistency. And then for the feedback, I love the concept of the feedback sandwich, where you said that we should compliment, correct, and then again compliment. That works very well. So on behalf of the entire DPS team, I, thank you for taking time out and honoring my request and being here for this.
Thank you. I'm always there. And I'm so thankful for you to think about me and that you can give me a session today. It's my honor. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Sonal, what you said is also true. Very true. Nice comments.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, good evening, teachers. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anupama. Let me take your leave. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for
thank
this
you so much.
opportunity. I love this session.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us.